Hi, let's talk about Title 10, and once again, this will be a very short video. Title 10 talks about appraisal right, which you have been hearing um, in earlier videos. So, a stockholder shall have the right to dissent and demand payment of the fair value of the shares in the following cases stated therein. So, there are four instances stated under Section 80, but I just want to clarify that the appraisal right is also seen. I'll just write it here as sections 11 in my beautiful handwriting, 15, 41, 76, 80, excuse me, 76, 80, and 104. So these are also the instances where you will see this. Um, what if the appraisal right is not allowed in other instances, in instances out of these sections? Then the remedy would be to transfer the share to someone else. And the transfer would be under section 62. So I'll just put it in asterisk so you know that it's not included in the appraisal right. What is an appraisal right? Uh, it's actually a way to opt out by a dissenting stockholder. Let's just note that the appraisal right is more extensive when it comes to closed corporations under 104. So here in that case, the reason can be anything provided that the corporation has sufficient assets to cover its debts and liabilities exclusive of capital. And we'll get to that when we discuss closed corporations. Excuse me. The appraisal right, was created in order for dissenters to have a simple and direct remedy, um, not only when there is harmful change in the share contract, but also where they simply do not desire to accept the shares in a different corporation. This appraisal right does not only operate for the benefit of minority stockholders who usually dissent and want to opt out quickly, but also for majority shareholders because it will avoid any delays caused by dissenting stockholders. The appraisal right is not an inherent right, and that's the reason why this legislators had to create it under Title 10 of the Revised Corporation Code. Because if it were not stated in the Revised Corporation Code, the corporation cannot purchase the shares back as it would be in violation of the trust fund doctrine. And since it is not an inherent right, it is not an absolute right. Yeah, meaning there are limitations stated under the law. There is a here, wait lang. Let me just go to the types, no. You will notice that where is that? Here. In cases of extending or shortening the corporate term, there's a very good observation cited by a dean of a former dean of law school, Dean Villanueva or CLV. He commented that it is quite absurd to exercise the appraisal right if the corporation is to shorten its term of existence. Why? Because usually when you shorten corporate terms, it means you want to end it now. So if you want to end it now, why would you even want an appraisal right when everyone's gonna get their share of the capital anyway? Diba? So it's strange, especially since an appraisal right requires unrestricted retained earnings. Whereas, ganun din naman yun in, in dissolution, di ba? You don't get anything if there's no extra. So, how is the right exercised? It is by a written demand. It says right there within 30 days. Just take note of the periods. 30 days from the date on which the vote was taken. When you talk about appraisal right, it is a requirement that the stockholder exercising the right of appraisal dissented or did not voted nay, voted against a particular corporate act under the articles that I stated here under sections 115, 11, 15, 41, 76, 80, and 104. Now, the corporation shall pay the stockholder upon surrender of the certificates representing the shares, the fair value thereof because it's to be paid based on the fair value as of the day before the vote was taken. Now, there are periods stated therein, and I have written them down. So let me just skip it quickly, no? So again, I will repeat, under Section 81, there must be unrestricted retained earnings in order for a stockholder to exercise their right of appraisal. So Section 82, effect of demand or and termination of right. From the time of the demand, the rights of the stockholder to dividends, voting shares, and all other rights are suspended. They are not terminated, ha. The rights are not gone, they're just merely suspended. When is it restored? If the value of the shares are not paid within 30 days after the award. So if you, what is an award? Usually under Section 81, I did not discuss it pala kanina. If within 60 days from the approval of the corporate action, the withdrawing stockholder cannot and the corporation cannot agree on the fair value, it shall be determined by 3 disinterested persons, 1 voted by the corporation, 1 voted by or appointed or chosen by the dissenting stockholder, and a 3rd one chosen by both. So this is where your roles as future accountants come in. Syempre, you're talking about appraisal fair value. So, syempre, it's a math thing. It's an accountant's job. Normally, but it's not required that the person be a CPA. So, it can be any disinterested person. Once the 3 persons arrive at an award, then the 30 days shall start within which the corporation must pay the stockholder. The demand for payment ceases only upon the consent of the corporation. It cannot be by the whim of the dissenting stockholder na, I don't want na, I want to stay. No, it's not that way. Once you make a demand, your rights are suspended, and the right to payment only ceases when the corporation consents, or the corporation decides to abandon the act that the stockholder was dissenting on. I'm not sure if my English is right. Or if the commission determines that the stockholder is not entitled to the appraisal right. So why is it that the stockholder does not seem to have a say in these instances? I think it's because it would be unfair for a dissenting stockholder to demand payment, and then for the corporation to have to appoint disinterested persons if they don't come up with a fair value, or they have to talk about the fair value pa in order to determine an award. And then in the interim, from the time that they demanded to exercise their right of appraisal to the time that they arrive at an award and they are paid, if something happens like dividends are paid, syempre the dissenting stockholder may think, parang I don't want to exercise my right na. I think that's what the corporation code is trying to avoid, yung dilly-dallying of the dissenting stockholders. If you want out, that's it. Like a breakup. Okay, who bears the cost of appraisal under Section 84? It is the corporation unless the fair value ascertained by the appraisers is approximately the same as the price which a corporation may have offered to pay. And the reason there is because the corporation already gave you an offer, tapos the dissenting stockholder is kind of the cause of the delay by asking for appraisers. Yun pala, the value of the appraisers is the same as the one that the corporation initially wanted. It would be unfair for the corporation to pay for that. In case of an action to recover the fair value, all costs and expenses shall be assessed against the corporation unless the refusal by the stockholder to receive payment was unjustified. It's self-explanatory, no? Okay, now notation of the certificates is 10 days after demanding the payment of shares. So within 10 days after demanding payment, the dissenting stockholder shall submit the certificate for notation. Failure to do so at the option of the corporation, meaning it's not automatic, will terminate the rights, the appraisal rights. Once there is let me just continue. If the shares represented by the certificates bearing such are transferred and the certificates cancelled, the rights of the transfer as a dissenting stockholder shall cease, and the transferee shall have all the rights of a regular stockholder. I just made a very quick, weird looking graph. So day zero, these numbers refer to days in case you're wondering. Zero is the day that the corporation made the corporate, voted on the corporate act. Within 30 days is the right to demand payment, to exercise the appraisal right. Within 10 days from the demand of payment is when they should surrender the certificate for notation. Then they will discuss the fair value between the corporation and the dissenting stockholder or stockholders. If there is no agreed fair value price within 60 days from day zero, then they can appoint appraisers. 3. Disinterested persons. Why is there a question mark? Because the law does not state how long these appraisers have within which to determine an award. From the time that an award is made, or from the time that the parties agreed upon a fair value, because it's possible that within 60 days that they actually agree on an amount. Basta there's an award from that time or from here, they have 30 days within which to pay. I hope that makes sense. So what are other notes that I want you to know before we end this video? There is no prescribed method of determining fair value, so it's possible to consider future income or performance of the corporation that can be taken into consideration. What if the corporation unjustifiably refuses to pay despite full compliance with all the requirements, and despite the fact that the corporation has unrestricted retained earnings? Then they can go to court to compel the corporation. So what are the rights of a dissenting stockholder? Take note, I mentioned earlier under the law that the rights are only suspended. So they are still shareholders. They do not become mere creditors. Loosely put, they are only creditors. That's why I put quotation air quotes, because it's only into the sense that they are entitled to be paid the value of his or her or its shares. So if you've seen at the last section, the effect of the transfer is the abandonment of the appraisal right, because the appraisal right is not transferred to the transferee or assignee. Why is that? Because earlier I mentioned, in order to exercise the right of appraisal, that stockholder must dissent to the corporate act proposed. A transferee or assignee did not get to vote or did not get to dissent. So it's that easy. And that's it, Title 10. So I will see you in Title 11.